Hey guys, what's going on? It's Rekt Capital and welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for joining me in today's video about the MACD and whether or not that bullish crossover that we had a few weeks back, even a few months back, is that now in jeopardy with this recent pullback in Bitcoin's price. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future and let's dive right in. So a few months back, many months back, in fact, in June or even May, I spoke about how we were seeing historic overextension towards the downside in the MACD. And remember, the MACD is a pretty useful indicator in just judging bearish or bullish trends ahead of time before they actually happen. And one of the useful tools for this is to just imagine a zero line right over here. And whenever we see downside deviation in these red histograms and then curling up in these histograms, that's usually an indication that we might be seeing a bullish trend develop. And of course, at the same time, if we're seeing bullish overextension and then curling down, then that's a good indication that we might be slowing in the bull side momentum and we might be heading for a crash. So you can see how bullish this time was in the histogram, and then a curling down showcasing bearish divergence here, preceding a crash, at least stalling in the price action before seeing that weakness translate into price action and crash. Here we were talking about this deviation towards the downside, curling up and then ultimately reversing towards the downside, towards the upside, apologies. But let's focus on this portion of price action because we saw a bullish MACD crossover a few weeks back, and indeed we saw a bit of upside, but since then we've actually seen these bullish histograms start to decline. So a curling down in the histograms, but not only that, this bullish crossover yielded some upside, limited upside, but upside nonetheless. And now we might be seeing yet another crossover to invalidate this crossover. And that's something to be a bit concerned about because like I mentioned to you guys here at the beginning of the video, curling down in the histograms followed by a bearish crossover, that ends the trend for the time being. In the same way we see a bullish recovery here in the histograms followed by a bullish crossover, that's a good indication of an uptrend. What we might be seeing now is curling down in the histograms and a crossover to boot. So if we see this crossover, that would essentially confirm this sort of bearish diverging in the histograms, invalidating potentially this bullish crossover. But what I want to focus on here on the monthly, because we just covered the weekly time frame, let's focus here on the monthly because we've been seeing tremendous overextension in the green histograms for the entirety of this year, in fact reaching back to July of 2020, because we've seen this diverging and then pulling back in the histograms here. And what we need to note here is that once we had that overextension towards the upside in Bitcoin's uptrend, these two moving averages were quite far apart from one another, really showcasing how overextended towards the upside this uptrend really was. But now we're seeing these two MAs converge, about to cross over in the next few months. Because this is the monthly time frame, we still have time for that bearish crossover to potentially not even happen. We might see convergence or even leveling out before we see a crossover like that. It's still far away from a bearish crossover. And in fact, if we focus here on these histograms, we're seeing declining, but this decline from this bar to this bar, and then from this bar to this bar in the histogram, you're seeing smaller declining, right? This declining is actually getting a little bit, it's tapering off over time. So while we saw a crash and significant tapering in the MACD histogram, what we're seeing now is potentially this tapering declining. And this is of course the month of September. We're still seeing changes here, so this will still be adjusting in real time, so we can't really say whether we're declining fully. Let's see how the monthly candle closes just to give us an idea whether indeed we are tapering off here on the histogram. But at the moment, that does seem to be the case, which might be showcasing to us that we might be still in the running for that uptrend going forward, because we are seeing tapering off in the histogram. This bearish crossover is still nowhere near to actually crossing over, and we're still seeing higher lows consistently for 4 months in Bitcoin's price action. And in fact, if you focus on this current level here, this being the previous resistance, this being the support here, we are currently in the process of a retest, and this has been quite a volatile retest because we're quite below it at the moment, but we're forming a higher low still, and there is still time for Bitcoin to slink above this level for that successful retest attempt. Because at the moment, if you focus on this resistance here and this region right over here, resistance, and then resistance, support here, we've claimed this level into a support. So this level has been claimed into a support, and this resistance is in the process of being turned into a support. Much can still happen in this week, in the next few weeks going forward until the monthly close. We need to see how Bitcoin retests this level, but this is promising to see these higher lows going forward, and it's promising to see the tapering off here in the histogram. Higher time frames first. Even though we're seeing a bit of conflict here on the weekly MACD, we still haven't seen a crossover here, and perhaps we could see some tapering off here in the MACD histograms as well. What we need to focus on is higher time frames first, and while this bullish crossover happened here, and there is a threat of this bullish crossover actually being invalidated with this bearish crossover, let's see how things develop going forward, because the higher time frames are still showing quite a lot of promise, even though the weekly is showing a bit of neutrality in that respect. But nonetheless, worth looking at these higher time frames, specifically the monthly, because this is what we should be focusing on as the month nears its close very soon in the coming weeks. In any case, guys, that's about it for today's video update. Thank you so much for watching today. I'm Rekt Capital. Please like the video if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, and of course subscribe to the channel to see more content like this going forward. In any case, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll speak to you in the next one. Speak to you soon.